everyone. Today we're going to talk about crosstab reports from the CRM using the integrated Exalgo reporting. Crosstab reports are basically the equivalent of pivot tables in Excel. And if you're not familiar with that, then what it is basically a matrix style report. So if you can imagine a report where you have perhaps years going across the top, 2012, 13, 14, 15, and then down the right-hand side, you might have the names of your donors. And at the intersection of each row and column, you would have a total amount donated that year. So you'd have, Jane Doe, and then how much she donated in 2012, and how much she donated in 2013 or 2014, and then you'd have Bob Smith, and et cetera, et cetera. For my main menu, I'm going to go to Enhanced Reports, and I'm actually going to run one of my crosstab reports that I already have set up here in my demo system to give you an idea of what it looks like in case you're having a hard time picturing what I mean or you're not familiar with pivot tables or crosstabs. So I have a bunch of crosstab demo reports here. So I'm going to start with donations by year, and I'm just going to run this. And so this is the amount donated, I think by person. This might be by fund or program. Okay, so this is actually, I'm sorry, by gift source. So this is actually, it says year, it's not, shouldn't say year. This is by month, so it's pulling out, this is January, February, March, April, and this is how my donations made their way to me. So in January of whatever the year this report was, $3,900 came from in-person, $8,259 came from online donations, $5,100 came from mail, etc. You can do a crosstab on sums like that one was. You can also do counts. So here I have one that's number of donations by year. So if I want to see how many donations, not just the dollar amount, but am I getting fewer but larger donations, or I'm getting more but smaller donations, etc. So you might want to compare counts of donations, count of event attendees by year, by program, by event, count of memberships by level by year. So here's one. So, Abby Jacks, she didn't make any donations in 2014, 2015, and 2016 she made 11. In 2017 so far she's made 9. So this is a good report to do to find your consecutive donors and see who's dropped off is one way. You could do it by donation amount as well, but crosstabs will let you be able to see trends across years, across months. You can use them to do sort of comparisons like year to year, month to month, quarter to quarter, from year to year reports, etc. And you can do a crosstab, again, on kind of anything, on volunteers, on memberships, members, donors, donations, events, etc. You can count, you can average, and you can sum. So how do we make these magical, wonderful things, which are one of my favorite reports, and in fact, pretty easy to do. In some ways, they're a little bit easier to do than a standard or express report. So what you're going to do, as always, you're going to go down here to your Create New Report button, and we're going to select a new crosstab report. And the reason I find these a little bit easier is because I kind of have a wizard that lays everything out for you, and you, in some ways, don't have as many options and buttons, so it's a little less overwhelming. As always, you have to give it a name, and you're going to save it in your folder. Down here is where you can enter the description that will pop up in that little I button when somebody clicks on it from the index list. We're going to start, and unlike a standard or express report, instead of 5 steps, this is going to be only 3 steps. Start with picking your categories, your data categories, or basically your tables, where the data is that you want. In this case, if I'm going to do donations by donor by year, I'm going to want the donor's name, so I'm going to need my contact table. And if I want those donations, I'm going to need my donation table to get the amounts and the date. Clicking next, going to take me to my filters. This is if I want to filter those donations. So if I want to say only show me donations made to a particular fund or a program or campaign, or only donations made during certain dates, or only by donors who live in California, like whatever, I might want to filter this report by and limit the data that I see on it. Now in this case, I want to see all donations for all time. You could also use this to filter out, by the way, in-kind donations if you only want cash gifts included in your report. So you could go ahead and add any filters, and this works exactly the same as it does on Standard and Express reports. And if you're not familiar with that, you can watch the basic reporting webinar that will go over kind of how to work with filters. Now next on the Layout tab is where the magic happens, and this is how you can tell you're in a crosstab report instead of a Standard or Express report, because your window looks completely different. So what you're going to do here is your row header source and your column header source. And down here it's giving you a little preview, which is good, because I do have to admit, even though I've written many crosstab reports and I do this demo like every other month on the webinar, I always get the row and column headers backwards. Just something in my brain doesn't like it. And the good thing is once you drag a field over and put it here in the row, it's going to populate this little example, and you're going to instantly know if you put it in the wrong place. So for instance, I want years going across the top, and I want my donor names going down the sides. So I believe my donor name should go in the row header, I think. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab contact name, click and drag and drop it there. And look at my preview. Yes, I did it correctly. Okay, awesome. So then I also want my donation date, and I want that to go in my column headers to go across the top. So I'll grab that. And now it's going to put the dates. Now, here's the thing. This is actually, donation date is day, month, year, right? It's like 04/01/2017. If I leave this as is and just put the donation date, it's going to list every single discrete donation date in this report. And this report's going to be very long, and I'm going to see how many donations came in per person per day, basically, for all time. You might want that report, but I don't right now. I just want the years, right? I want everything grouped by year. To do that, we have to add a little function or formula to this date. And this is a cool function that I love very much and is very helpful. And it's a date function. And you go in here and you can get a function that will pull out the year portion of a date. So it says, I want you to ignore the day and the month, and I just want you to pull out the year. And we're just going to click that and drag it down here and drop it. What you're applying a function to always has to go inside the parentheses, so I had to just delete that closing parenthesis and move it outside my field name. So this is saying, pull out the year portion of the donation date. And now I'll just have 2012, 13, 14, 15 instead of January 1st, 2013, January 2nd, 2013, January 3rd, 2013. You can apply a function as well to your row header as well as your column header. You can choose whether you want to sort by ascending or descending, and you can click on this little paper icon, gives you some options. So you can sort, in this case, it's saying, tell me if what the data in here in this row or column is going to be text, or if it's going to be a number, or if it's a tabular total. Tabular total means if you've done some sort of tabulation, so if you summed, counted, or averaged. So my row headers here are contact names, which is text, so I'm going to tell it that's text, and I want you to sort it in ascending order. Then I can go down here to my column headers and do the same thing, click on the little paper and pencil icon, get my options. Now this is a date, this is actually a number, so I want it to know that it's a number, and I want to sort those in ascending. I could do descending, so I could start with 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014, going from left to right. In this case, I want to start with oldest dates to newest dates. Then finally, this third option, tabulation data sources. So what data do you want to tabulate at the intersection of year and contact? And in this case, I want to tabulate the amount that was donated by each donor. I could tabulate, this event registrations. I could tabulate the count of event attendees. I could tabulate the number of memberships per membership level. I could tabulate the number of donations per donor, per fund, per campaign, whatever. And again, if we go into our tabulation options, this is where we can tell it whether we want to sum, average, count, pull out the minimum value, the maximum value, or no tabulation. And then do you want to Aggregate means, do you want a numeric value, a currency in this case, because it's totaling donations? Or do you want to calculate this as a percent of row or percent of column? And we'll come back and I'll show you what these do in a minute. So we're just going to start with aggregate, which means just give me the sum total here. You can present this as a currency. And then that's it. We do have some more report options in this tiny little button over here that's easy to ignore. But you can tell it how to place your rows in columns, or hierarchical means that it actually will look more like an index or an outline. It'll have indentations. Do you want to repeat the headers on every new page? That's always a good thing to do. Do you want a grand total row at the bottom? So this is donations by donor by year, but then I could also see total donations per year. And total donations per donor. So per row would be per donor, because my donors are going down the left-hand side, which means they're the row headers, right? So if I say, I'm sorry, this is going to be a row per column. I do this backwards every time. So do you want this at the top or the bottom? So do you want the grand total at the top or at the end of your report? I'm going to put it on the bottom. And then I could change this label if I wanted to. I could say grand total. And then the column, so this is actually going to be the row. This is going to be per person. And do I want that on the left or the right side? I personally like it on the right-hand side. And I could, again, say grand total or change that label if I wanted to. And then I'm going to click OK. Then once I've gotten everything all set up and pretty in the way I like it, I'm going to hit finish. This is going to take me, as with the standard or express report, it will take me into the edit layout option, where I can tweak my report. I can change font colors and font sizes and alignment and some of that formatting stuff to get the report to look the way I want. And when you're in here, now it's going to look like a standard report. And every time I go into edit, I'm going to be in here. But if I need to edit any of the fields, if I go, oh, you know what, I didn't want contact name, I want fund name here, or donation source, all you have to do is you can click this little drop down here, or you can just double click anywhere in the report, and it's going to open up the crosstab wizard for you and take you right back in here so that you can change the names and all the information. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this report. And I've got some bad data in here, so this is why I'm getting this value column, because it's telling me I've got some donations here. I either got some donations with no amount or donations with no donor name, which exists in my demo database, because we can do bad things in our demo database, and we often are testing for bad things and creating crazy records. In your system, you should not end up with this. You should not be able to enter a donation without a donor name or a donation without a donation amount. So if you see this, this means there's something bad in your database, but you should not have that. But here we go. So A+ Inspectors has given me no donations. Abby Jacks gave me 381 in 2016 and 290 in 2017, etc. Now it looks like it's showing me all of my people in my database, regardless of whether or not they have donated. And that is the same as with a standard report that has to do with my table joins. There's a separate tutorial in the tutorial library about handling your table joins. So I'm actually just going to do this quickly without really explaining why I'm doing it. And you can always check that tutorial if that's new to you. So now when I run it, it should only show me donors instead of everybody. There we go. And it also got rid of my error because I had donors who had not made a donation. And so it was saying I can't sum up the donation amount for these people because they don't have any donation amount, because it was showing me contacts, all my contacts, regardless of whether or not they had donated. So now this is a little prettier, a little easier to read. We went from 95 pages to 6, much better. And here we go. And here's my crosstabs. So that was actually super fast and easy, right? It's like, who do I want in the columns? Who do I want? What do I want in the rows? Or vice versa. And then, bam, run it. So this is actually a really fast, pretty simple thing to do in Exago, and I love these. So I do a monthly webinar, actually every other month or once a quarter, a live webinar on crosstabs, where I'll go a little more into depth into the different types of crosstabs you can write and also formatting. Same as with a standard report, I can right click in here, I can go into format these cells, add conditional formatting, add the currency symbol, add decimal places, etc. But this is a good basic overview and kind of enough to get you started. And then from where you go from there is up to you. You can actually do two headers. Actually, I'm going to show you guys one more thing here. We'll go back in. You can do multiple column and row headers, by the way. So you can have subheaders. So I've got the year here. I could go back and I could add the month underneath. Now this report's about to get really long. But I'm going to drag the donation date over here, and then I'm going to go in and add a formula, and I want to pull out the month portion. So I'm going to go back into my date functions here, and I'm going to find month, and I'm going to drag that out. Make sure what I'm applying the function to, the field name, is inside the parentheses. Click OK. Click OK. And then now I'm going to run it. And I should have 2014, I think, was the first year of data, and then under that I should have January, February, March, April, May, and then a column for each month per year. Now the format, I'd have to go back in and play with this to make this a little better, but hopefully you can kind of get the idea here. So here's 2015, here's January, February, March, April, May, June, all the way up through to 12. And then again, here's 2016 each month. Now I can convert these numbers to month name. There's a function for that. There's a separate tutorial that covers that. And then I could go in and adjust these column widths to make this a little prettier and easier to read, but you get the idea, which is you can have sub column headers, and you can actually have sub rows here. I could divide each donor by like the fund that they donated to. So I can have Abby Jackson, all her donations per year to my annual fund, to my building fund, to my scholarship fund, and my sponsorship fund, for instance. So you can actually get really in depth with these and really crazy and make some really interesting and really easy to read but value-added reports that are comparison reports that are comparing across, like I said, like donation funds or programs or campaigns or across donors, across years, months, quarters, etc. And there you go.